with Scott Allen.
Hello, I am your host, Scott Allen, and this is Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. If the topic is leadership, I'm in. I've spent more than 20 years in the field teaching, learning, writing, and questioning. When I'm not working on Phronesis, I travel, delivering keynotes, working with individuals and teams, and helping people from organizations across industries become better leaders. Want to learn more? Visit me at scottjallen.net. Phronesis offers a smart, fast-paced discussion about all things leadership. We explore relevant topics and incorporate practical tips to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. Listen Notes lists Phronesis in the top 3% of podcasts worldwide. Phronesis is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. ILA brings together those who teach, study, and develop leadership, advancing leadership knowledge and practice for a better world. Learn more at ila-net.org. Finally, if you enjoy Phronesis, please subscribe to stay current on our weekly episodes. If you find an episode that resonates, please share it with your colleagues and friends. And if you want more content, subscribe to my newsletter, The Leader's Edge. The link is in the show notes. As always, thanks for listening. And now, here's today's show.
Okay, everyone, welcome to the program. Hope you are doing well wherever you are in the world. Today, speaking of world, I have a global expert. His name is Mark Bowden, and he is a world-renowned body language expert, keynote speaker, and best-selling author. He was voted Global Guru's #1 body language professional in the world. Mark's unique GesturePlane system of nonverbal communication helps audiences maximize the power of using their own body language to stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they communicate. Founder of communication training company GesturePlane, Mark's live and virtual keynote speeches and training prove invaluable to business leaders and teams from influential companies across the world, including Zoom, Spotify, Toyota, KPMG, American Express, the U.S. Army, and NATO, and prime ministers of G7 nations. Mark has years of experience training business and political leaders across the globe on how to use their body language, both live and over digital media, most effectively for superior communication. He has several best-selling books. We're going to place those into the show notes. And his highly acclaimed TED Talk, I watched it this morning. I was literally sitting in my basement laughing out loud, Mark. The importance of being inauthentic continues to reach millions of people. And he has his own YouTube channel, The Behavior Panel. He appears regularly on CNN, CBS, Global News, and he's frequently quoted in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, GQ. Mark, before we started, you mentioned your son, and I'm thinking, wow, that's got to be difficult if my dad is a leading global expert in body language and truth-telling, because, where were you last night? Jimmy's?
Right. Well, look, you can't do that to your kids. You got to understand, lying and telling the truth is one of our most important social skills. It's a really important social skill to be able to be deceptive, and it's a very important social skill to be able to be honest. And you just need to know where you need to do which one in order to function within society. Imagine a world, Scott, where you told the truth all the time. I mean, people have literally made films out of that.
Was it Liar, Liar? Was that
Liar? Yeah. And I think there's another one. There's one where somebody can't stop. Well, I think actually it always goes in the reverse, doesn't it? They have to tell the truth, which denotes that there is a strong need always to have the ability to be deceptive. Okay. And people tend to moralize around the idea of deception and lying and go, well, you must never lie. You must never. Well, hang on. If you've got some, if you're hiding somebody in your house from some genuinely bad people and they come round and they say, hey, are they here? What, do you tell the truth or do you lie? Yes. Well, of course you lie. Yeah. And do you want to be a good liar or a bad liar? Of course you want to be a good liar. You want to be really good at it. So you are practiced at that, and you are as good as you can be at that. Now I'm better than the majority of people of noticing when you do that. Okay. not perfect, but better than most people.
Yeah.
Okay. And quite a lot better than most people. Okay. But if I did that with my son, it would stop him learning how to do that really, really well. He wouldn't be able to function in society.
Yeah.
So you can't do that with your kids. You have to give them that opportunity to show that they can and practice being honest and practice being deceptive. It's really important.
That's so interesting. It's such an interesting perspective. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? It just does.
Right.
But you're right. Talk about this whole thing around moralizing, and then I want to kind of jump into the discussion. But you hear that a lot. I imagine you hear, and even your TED Talk was, it was about inauthenticity. That there's a time and a place and a very real human biological reason why we are inauthentic at times.
Yeah. So the whole authenticity thing actually for me got mixed up with a morality as far as I could see, because I would see people go around the planet going, oh, you've got to be authentic. You've got to be authentic. And they would go, well, they're not being authentic. And they would get pretty, and I want to work on my authenticity. And I'd think to myself, if we just changed that for holiness, we were back almost kind of pre-enlightenment, with people having this moral idea of what people do, how they perform, and I think it was because, look, as we changed very much to having a lot of freedom and consumerism, and we saw the churches across the world, reduce their population, essentially their congregation. And just because, the classic churches reduce their congregation doesn't mean that people don't have a need for some kind of spirituality. Sure. And I think they found it in the ideal of something called authenticity, but it's a very intangible thing. How do I know when you're being authentic? I simply don't. How do you know when you're being authentic? Well, it's a battle for you as well. You're grappling with the thing. So just like, how do I know if I'm being holy, and how do I know if you're being holy? Well, what religions did was produce some very strict books to go, look, it's in the manual. Just read the manual. Well, there was no manual for authenticity. And so it became just this moralizing to fill a spiritual gap for people to go, hey, I want to be super authentic. You're not being authentic. And that for me just felt like people going, I don't like you, but not being able to say, I don't like your behavior. They would go, I don't think you're being authentic. Well, it's the same with deceit as well. St. Augustine wrote a number of treatises on lying. I think about 12, actually. He was quite obsessed with the idea of lying. Augustine said there were many, many different types of lying. Or maybe it was 12 types of lying rather than 12 treatises. But anyway, he said there were many different types of lying, all of which were bad, okay? But some were badder than others.
Yeah.
Okay? We all know that you have to be able to be deceitful, and it's just moralizing when people go, yeah, but you should never lie. It's like, of course you should. Of course you should. Of course you should. Don't be ridiculous. Of course you should lie. And you need to be very, very good at it. It's when you do it in the wrong place that people get upset. Or, look, you belong to one social group, or one, nation, or one political party, and the other side lie, and you go, oh, they're really bad. But if you did the lie, that'd be all right. I mean, that'd be moral if you did the lie. So we lie to support the groups around us, and we tell the truth to support the truth, the groups around us.
Well, so it's so much fun to even watch the behavior panel. I watched a clip of Alec Baldwin, one of the episodes recently, where he was and I sent you an email also. I said, hey, there's this really cool interview on YouTube right now with the former CEO of WeWork. And that's kind of an interesting conversation. When you work with leaders, what are some things, some nonverbal cues and behaviors that people in positions of authority should be aware of? What do they have to display to quickly earn trust, earn favor? Are there some nonverbal cues that either derail or accentuate their ability to do so? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start at a really fundamental one, which is just being there. Okay. Yeah. So Because look, one of the reasons I've been so successful in this world of nonverbal is I've really tried to pare it down to the most essential things. And people forget the basics, which is, are you there?
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you seen a crisis go on, in any kind of situation, and you go, so where's the leader? Where's the leader? And they're not there. And where are they? Somewhere very different from where everybody else is.
Yes.
And you go, hang on, what are you doing? What are you doing out there? Like, we're all here. Yeah. What are you doing right out there? So proximity is one of our indicators of intimacy and relationship. And so if you are in social space with somebody, let's just say you're within the kind of area of, let's just say kind of somebody's large living room. You're within that kind of space. If you're in personal space, you're almost within arm's length of them, almost what I would call striking distance. If you're in intimate space, you're within maybe even kind of 1.5 feet of somebody. Yeah. And outside of that, you're in a large living room with them. Outside of that, you're in public space. Well, at least the CEO should be, the leader should be in public space with the situation, maybe even social space, maybe even within personal or intimate space. Wasn't it that Diana, Princess Diana, was seen as such a important leader for all kinds of reasons? One of them was her ability to get into intimate space with the public, and with a suffering public. Essentially, to get into that intimate space with them. So, space is incredibly important, and often, showing up in the right space is a failure for some. Then within that, there's, are you open or are you closed? Within that. And that's very simple to describe. For me, I kind of go, look, open body language is like when you've come in from the outdoors on a very, very cold day, especially if you're in Canada like me, very, very cold day, and you stand in front of a warm fire. And what do you start to do with your body? Well, you take your coat off, your jacket off, you open up that torso area, you're warming your hands on the fire. So you're opening up your hands, you're opening up the gap between your arms and your torso, and kind of letting the air get around you. You're more vulnerable because you want to take in that energy and take in that heat. What's closed body language? Well, you're outdoors, you're outside, the wind's blowing, and you tuck your elbows right into your torso. You hide your hands as well. You maybe even, wrap your hands, your arms in front of your body. Your neck your head shrinks into your torso, and your neck disappears, and your shoulders rise. And now you've got that closed body language. I mean, I could fill it out a little bit more, but ultimately that's as easy as anybody and as difficult as anybody really needs to know. Fundamentally there, look, are you in the right space right now when this situation happens, and are you open or are you closed? And my guess is we want to see our leaders open and vulnerable open to what's happening, not protecting themselves from that, but calm and assertive and open in the space that we're in at that time. Anyway, I hope that makes sense to you, Scott.
It does. It does. Can you think of some individuals that you've come across that do that well, that you view tape of them and you say, wow, I know you mentioned Diana. She's in the space. There's also an interesting, not only in the space, but she would spend time, right? She would spend time with the children and really immerse herself in that. It wasn't a photo op and then now I'm out. Right. That was my impression.
Right.
You're probably right. What matters.
You're right. Yes. There is the, time is part of nonverbal as well. So how long did you spend in that moment? What was your rhythm within that moment? Did you kind of move and flit from element to element within that? Or did you spend some time with that? I guess one piece that comes to mind was actually Princess Diana, the day after Diana was pronounced dead, was Tony Blair, who came out immediately to the public and coined the term the People's Princess.
Wow.
And then immediately made an announcement with his very classic, at the time, open body language. Very classic. If you, I guess, compare that to the royal family, and we can understand, all kinds of reasons for mourning and such like, absolutely. But the reality is, for example, the Queen of England, that she isn't just a woman or, a mother and a grandmother. Well, she represents the country. In fact, further than that, she is the country. The law says that really she is the country. And so if she doesn't come out and say something, the country is silent. And so that had a massive impact on the country. Tony Blair's ratings go up massively. The Queen's ratings plummet immediately, because one was there and open and one wasn't there. And therefore we couldn't see whether she or the country was open or closed to this event. So interesting. And we can understand all kinds of reasons why people did things and didn't do things, but the viewer doesn't necessarily understand those reasons at the time or want to know those reasons.
Well, okay, so we've got proximity, we've got openness. What are some other hallmarks of individuals who are communicating? As a leader, I'm in a position of authority. What are some other nonverbals that communicate openness, leadership, that authority, that I have command of this situation, of this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So symmetry. So our brain favors symmetry in terms of looking for leadership, because symmetry is easier for our brain to understand, because one side is the same as the other. And the moment we're set up with this pattern of symmetry, we start to understand that we don't need to look at both sides of the body, because they're most likely now always going to be the same. So once you set up the pattern of symmetry, you make it easier on people's brains. You're literally less neural load. Their brain power, they need less brain power, and the brain favors using less energy than more energy. So if you're the type of person that causes my brain to use less energy, neural load, I like you more than that person over there who uses up extra neurons. Every time I use a neuron, it means like I gotta make sure that I sleep properly, to replace the calcium up one end of the neuron at the end of the night. I gotta do lymphatic drainage. It's like, and if that doesn't happen, it's like, man, this is doing my head in talking to this person. I hope I get a good night's sleep, or I'm going to have a disaster tomorrow morning. So symmetry is really, really important. Taking up space. So that's not taking up other people's territory, but using the full amount of your own territory. Let's just say we got 3 circles of territory, okay? We've got what I call first circle, which is you're gesturing, around your body with my hands never leave touching my torso somewhere. My elbows never leave touching. So it's quite closed. Okay, it's quite closed. It might even look like closed body language, but the reality is that I am gesturing. It's not fully closed. I haven't wrapped my hands around my body. My hands are gesturing, but they always kind of return to the body. Well, I'm not using up a lot of the space that my body could take up. And that will suggest to you, though it's not necessarily true, but it will suggest to you that I don't deserve that territory, that space, or I'm worried about the risk of taking that space. And your brain goes, yeah, but it's yours to take. Like because the territory that I could take is right to the end of my fingers. If my joints are locked out, I would call that third circle. Second circle is where there's a bend in my joints. Okay. And generally, if I'm a leader and I'm using most of the time the second circle, you will find me a calmer and more assertive leader. If I use that second circle, and also if I'm symmetrical as well, open body language, second circle, symmetrical. If I do those things, if you compared to the person who is going to be closed, asymmetrical, first circle, you are gonna favor me. Now, because of this, because you favor me and you favor me at an instinctual level, this doesn't mean that I've got any good ideas or I'm more moral than the other person or more intelligent or I went to a better university or I've got more experience. I'm just triggering your instinct to see me as a more optimal leader from an instinctual level. Yeah. And many people say all the time, like, trust your instinct. They even go, these people have better instincts than these people, when all of them are alive, which means they've got, there is this classic thing of like, women have got a much better instinct than men. Well, if that were true, if that were absolutely true, then you would see a radical population difference between the two. You would see males wiped out of the gene pool at a much, much higher level, much, much higher level. So, we know it's not going to have the incredible variance that people want to put on that idea of this group have better instinct than that group. One might be more vocal about it than the other. That's a possibility. And they're vocal about it and we don't pick them up on when they were wrong, because that would be socially unacceptable to constantly go, you keep on talking about your instinct. I've logged all the times you were inaccurate. It's about a 50-50 for you, like most other human beings. In fact, you tend to default to the negatives. You tend to be very unoptimistic about your instincts, which means just like me, you're alive right now because your instinct has to be negatively biased. It's never going to be optimistic. You're just a bit more vocal about it. We don't bring to your attention when you got it wrong. I'm not sure how I went down that line and what your question was anymore, but but there we go.
Well, you made me think of something, because I literally have a dilemma that I'm going to experience tomorrow night. So I'm giving a presentation at a world-class organization, but it's one of these presentations where it's hybrid. We've got a fixed camera on a podium, and I'm locked into a podium. Now, when I'm presenting, I'm using my hands, I'm using my space. That is part of how my energy is expressed. That is part of how I communicate and connect, using my space and moving around. And so I feel like tomorrow night, I'm going to be kind of locked into this box, right? Yeah. Now, I could perceive Zoom to be that way, but actually I feel very, very natural in this domain. So maybe I need to make the cognitive switch that really the podium is very, very similar to a Zoom presentation when you are in that context. Because I've watched you present, you're moving around, you're using your space. When you are placed in a context where the person says, we need you, Mark, behind the podium, 40 minutes. Right. How do you non-verbally communicate? Is it again second space? It's just higher hand gestures. It's voice. It's eye contact with wherever the camera is. How do you think about that challenge?
First of all, I wouldn't compromise.
Oh, you don't even put yourself in the situation.
Oh, no. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So they've invented, like many, like decades ago, they invented something on a tripod that meant you could move. You didn't have to lock it off. And you could move the camera around. And then there's people who make their living from moving that around. Okay. Now, why do you have a device that means you can move a camera around on a tripod? And then people who make their living at that, because it's better if that happens. Okay. It's just better if it happens, because there you are going, I'm the person with the content, I'm the person and it's better for me if I get to move and better for that live audience. And what they've gone, okay, but we got a TV audience as well. We got a Zoom audience as well. And they must be served too. Yeah, well, you can serve them too, but you get a camera on a tripod and you move that camera around. And people will go, this is great. This is great, because this is like, I'm getting that sense of live where my eyes are the camera now, and it tracks. What's happening by locking off the camera is everybody gets compromised for the sake of, a human being doing a job.
I couldn't agree more. I mean,
Right. Yeah. So look, here's the thing is that you turn up to these talks as a leader, and often the person trying to be helpful goes, oh yeah, okay. So there's the lectern, there's the podium, and there's the And I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. Yeah, you don't need to show me that. I won't be using that. And they're only trying to be helped. But if you comply, so there's the lectern for you to stand behind. You go, oh, right, okay, you want me to stand behind? Yeah, stand behind that. You can easily comply to their ideal of how it should be, and they have no idea. They just watched other things where somebody stands behind a lectern and a podium. Listen, the only reason I'm ever going to stand behind a lectern, okay, is that either it has the American seal of office on it, which means I'm now the president, okay, and I'm going to make the most of that. If and when that happens, that would be bizarre. Okay, because number one, I wasn't born in the US, so I just shouldn't. I don't know what coup d'etat has happened, but how I've ended up there is going to be an amazing story. Okay, because if Arnold Schwarzenegger can't do it, if I've managed to do it, that's going to be just off the charts. So it either has the American seal of office there, or it's bulletproofed. It's there to stop you getting killed. And again, that's like, why? What have I done? What has caused, live shooters to want to take me out? So other than that happening, I'm not going to be behind that lectern, because usually it doesn't have the American seal of office on it. It usually says Marriott Hotel on it. Hilton. And it's like, what? Hilton Hotel. It's like, why am I branding myself up to this terribly expensive coffee that nobody likes?
You just say no.
Here's what might happen as well. They might go, yeah, but the mic's on there.
Yes.
And you go, okay, I get that. Go and get a radio mic. Yeah. And they might go, oh, we didn't get one of those. Okay. And I will go, yeah, but it's on the description before we arranged this, that you have one of those. Yeah. And they will find one.
Well, I like the mindset, because I really am struggling with, how am I going to deliver an engaging presentation in this space for the next 40 minutes? Now, again, I think in my mind, it's a little bit easier because of Zoom, because I've done a lot of that in this domain. But even still, it's artificially hamstringing me. It's and I could have probably, you're exactly right, pushed back, been a little more assertive and less accommodating in this instance, and said, look, this is going to be better for me, but more importantly, it's going to be better for your audience, or just as important, it's going to be better for your audience if we can actually have this feel like it's a authentic experience. Because these hybrid, we went through the transition of Zoom, but now I imagine you will be placed in this situation as well, where we're doing these hybrid experiences, and that just becomes more and more.
Here's the thing, is that if it's hybrid, there's a group that have taken more risk than another group. The group that have shown up live have taken more risk than those that haven't.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I understand. I totally get, the group that didn't take that risk, why they didn't take it, or they just can't at the time. I get that. But you cannot create a level of equality when some people take more risk than others for all kinds of reasons. You have to serve the people who took more risk. It's as simple as that. Else everybody loses.
Yeah.
Everybody loses. Sure. So we now got somebody who's needing to follow me on a camera. You've had to pay somebody. All right. It's what is it? What's it going to be? It's not going to be very much. Okay. It's not going to be very much. It's never going to be what everybody paid for the awful coffee.
That's what I should have said, Mark, is I will reduce my rate by $25 for this hour.
Right. Because there's an hour of somebody for $25 on a camera. Yeah. Or just that coffee is $5 a cup and it's horrible. I won't drink any coffee. Okay. And I'll find some other people who aren't going to drink your horrible coffee. and there's your saving. Okay. So look, this is it's a kind of a political thing, and that you can't serve everybody the same. It's just not possible. And when you try and do that, you make life miserable for everybody, because often trying to serve some people better than others actually means that those others have a better knock-on effect as well. One group took more risk to be there live in the room. If you anchor yourself to the lectern, they'll have a bad time as well.
Yes.
And they'll be going, why didn't we stay at home and just press a button to watch this? Like,
You're
who's
right.
more important here?
You're right.
I got on a plane. I took a plane. Do you understand all the papers you have to carry now to get on a plane? I did that. They didn't do that. And we understand why. I get it. They can't, or they don't want to, or whatever. I get it. But somebody did.
Yep.
And at that point, there's a real kind of nonverbal inequity that happens, which they say, I'm breathing the same air as these other human beings. I'm in the same living territory as them. This is higher. And I don't just mean higher risk because of the health issue that we have at the moment, but I mean, literally the brain goes, I'm sitting next to somebody I don't know. Like, I've risked something. This better be for me.
Yes.
Not for all those people who didn't take that risk. And I know they've taken a risk by going, hey, I won't watch Netflix this evening. I will sit, or this afternoon, I will sit in front of a monitor and watch Scott. I know they've taken that kind of risk, but the two risks are not equal. And therefore, you need to decide who you're going to serve better than others so that everybody feels a great performance.
I just love even the notion, because as silly as it sounds, I hadn't given much thought to pushing back, to being a little more assertive and saying, look, you know what, if this is going to be a great experience, I kind of need this, because what's going to happen is my mind is going to be multitasking a little bit more and giving that the cognitive attention or just the energy versus just delivering a great presentation.
Right. And that person on the camera, their brain's job is to track you so you don't have to track into the camera. You just get another brilliant human mind to do it. They went to college to learn how to use these cameras. They had courses on how to follow somebody really well, on how to be ahead of that person, on how to look at their movement and go, here's where I think they're going to go next. To learn that pattern of movement so they start to move with you, to actually listen to what you're saying. So, I'll talk to the camera person during a performance and go, hey, come over here. I'll talk to the audience on Zoom during a hybrid performance and go, come with me over here. Yeah. And the camera will move over and it's like, wow, like Mark's moving me around. And the person on camera loves this stuff because suddenly they're a performer. They're an artist as well. They're part of this great experience. They haven't just gone, okay, set up the camera, lock it off, sit there and do nothing with the brain. So engage everybody, push back. When I push back, people go, oh gosh, yes, that's a really good idea. We hadn't thought of that. It's like, yeah, why would you? That's why I'm the expert and you're not.
Well, okay. Last question for the morning.
Lovely.
So what have you been thinking about lately? What's been top of mind for you? What are some key questions that you're exploring?
Yeah, well, here's what my biggest learning has been over the health crisis and getting on Zoom, working regularly with Zoom. So I train just about everybody at Zoom. I certainly have been through most people who are already there and I get all their new hires. What interests me about video is that we are primed to become passive consumers when we get in front of a screen. Yeah. And so even a live event, imagine, Scott, when you do that speech, you've got these people live in a room who are now more primed to be active contributors because there's way more risk. Okay. Way more risk. So they already value it higher.
Yes.
They already, the Scott that's live in the room will be valued as way more valuable than the Scott that's on video. Okay. It'd be an interesting experiment to do. Okay. Put a little, 0 to 10, 0 being least, 10 being most. How good do you think Scott is going to be? Okay. Get them to do it in the room and get them to do it on camera. I guarantee in the room, they're going to rank you as you're going to be much, much better. Okay. Because there's way more sunk cost. And therefore they value it more. They're not idiots. Their brain's going, I'm not stupid. I wouldn't be drinking bad coffee next to somebody I don't know, during
in a mask.
in a mask, if this wasn't going to be great. The people on video are going, well, I pressed a button to get here, easy in, easy out. I can easily get out. Probably not that good. Okay. So that's really interesting. So one group are primed that you are more valuable, and therefore also they're primed to want to contribute more, be more involved. Okay. So every time we get on video with somebody, that we're slightly primed to be passive consumers, not active contributors. So one of the things that I've been working on. So first of all, I located that problem. I went, here's the big problem. People went, oh yeah. We hadn't even thought about that. It's like, well, okay, that's why I'm here. Because I thought about that instantly. And then I went, what are the techniques that we can use to trigger that video audience into being active contributors rather than passive consumers? And the way we do that is to stop them being triggered into antisocial behaviors and trigger them into social behaviors. So I designed a whole bunch of techniques in order to trigger that video crowd into social behaviors rather than falling back into their antisocial, passive consumer behaviors. So, for example, today, Scott, before we got on this video together, and we were having a good time, weren't we? We were like, we were getting warmed up for this conversation that we're having. How much did I talk about your background, all the stuff in there? Yeah. And start to learn about your life and what I would say your value system, what you think is most important by saying, what's that? What's that back there? Tell me about that. Tell me about that thing. And you were only too happy to tell me about these things that you've placed around you, because my guess is you have jurisdiction on that, and you've chosen some of these things consciously or unconsciously because it reflects what you believe to be most important in the world.
Oh, for sure.
And as I talk about that, okay, and I accept those things, so you get socially bonded to me. I mean, if I'd have gone, what's that in the background? Looks like Amelia Earhart. I don't know why you'd have that up there. That's a bit silly. Like instantly you'd have gone,
like, you jerk.
You jerk. Mark's a bit of an idiot, isn't he? But instead, what I do is to go, hang on, what's that back there? That's interesting. Is that? So that you can go, yeah, and fill in the gap. And then there's another one. I go, so I can't quite see that one. What's that about over there? And you're like, that's Miles Davis over there. I'm like, oh, really great. Miles, fantastic. So I'm really accepting of these elements coming in. I don't need to agree with them. Nope. I could go, I love that you got Miles Davis up there. I wonder what else you could have as well. Like I could, or I could go, I love that you've got Miles Davis up there. I'll tell you who I'd choose. As long as I accept your choices, your nonverbal world, I can offer a different one and go here and we would still get along fine, so long as you were going to be accepting as well. So look, I think, there are good techniques that we now have for triggering people into engaging with another human being. And actually, we started off earlier on a conversation about, hey, we're meeting here rather than a coffee shop. And I was saying, well, there's some big differences, important differences between this and a coffee shop, is that in a coffee shop, I'd have never got to understand that you would choose Miles Davis to be on display, Amelia Earhart to be on display. What would I have seen around you? Images of coffee beans in very horrible pastel colors, probably, and I'd be like, and that tells me nothing about you.
Yeah.
So when we meet in these faceless corporate environment or valueless corporate environment, because like the coffee shop, why have we got on this wall? Why put coffee up? Because we value coffee. Well, of course you do. You're a coffee shop. Of course you do. But what else is important? Obviously coffee. That's how you make your living. But how do you deliver coffee that makes you? So when I see Amelia Earhart, when I see Miles Davis behind you, and I go, well, look, here's what Scott does. But how does he do it? Well, I'm going, probably he sees himself or he aspires to or does deliver it with a sense of innovation, a sense of maybe revolutionary, often a sense of like, let's break the mold on this one. Let's do it a little bit differently on this. Right. Well, yeah.
In the game, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So on a first meeting, I can already pick up on those elements there. I see you've got a butterfly in the background there. A butterfly, always one of those classic symbols, not only of beauty, but of transformation. Yes. As well. And so again, I see you, Scott, and I go, so, I know what he does, but how does he see it? Well, he probably sees it as transformational, probably sees it as development, because why else would he choose the butterfly? Maybe he sees it as beautiful as well.
Well, I'll tell you the quick story.
Yeah,
and then I'll let you go, because
I'm interested in the story.
I can take you through all of this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But, sure. Yeah, my chair of my dissertation committee gave that to me as a gift after achieving my Ph.D. So it was transformational and transformation. So that was a gift from John, which I've always just absolutely cherished.
Lovely. Well, don't let me go yet, because let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's very important to you, because you've kept. I mean, it's a dead butterfly.
Kind of odd when you think about it.
Dead animal. It's like, I put a dead animal there. A dead animal, of which there are millions of those things around each year. It's like, I keep one here. So obviously it means something more than a dead animal. Okay. Yeah. And you tell this story of, I think it was John you said, giving you this as a representation of your transformation from, post-grad to doctor, which is that's a big effort on anybody's scale. That's a big effort. Because, I've written 4 books, but ultimately nobody peer reviews me. No, they're like the publishers are just like, if it's done, let's publish it. Let's just go. Is it spelt relatively right? I'm like, I don't know. Is it accurate? Possibly. Possibly. Let's get it out. So, it's a big move. But what I'm really interested in is, when he gave you that, because you kept it, well, how did you feel? When he went, there you go. What was the feeling that went with that?
Well, it was, I had just incredible appreciation for how he had guided me through the process and provided this beautiful kind of balance of, they call it the zone of proximal development, right? Challenged the heck out of me, but at no point did I feel like I wasn't being supported. So for me, it was also representative of the relationship and the achievement, and just appreciating what he did for me as a mentor and as a guide kind of through that process. Because sometimes in higher education, it's a very, very different tone that people take when it comes to that process. It's much more, supervisor lackey type thing. And so in some ways it represents relationship.
Yeah, interesting.
Because he was just incredible at building that relationship with me, pushing me. But again, I felt completely supported.
Interesting. So again, like by looking at the background here and just having a talk about it, to what most people would kind of go, well, that's kind of small talk. Actually, what it's eliciting from your nonverbal environment is your value system. Yeah, what's most important to you, and we're able to talk about feelings around that. Because most people get into conversations about who, where, what, the W's, which are good kind of interrogation questions as to, what is going on around, accurate or inaccurate. But for me, the real meat of a situation is in like that went on, how did that feel?
Yeah.
And let me give you another question, if I may. I'm interested that, you had this relationship that you're kind of saying in the academic world, it's for you, it's a better relationship to have, but it's not kind of ubiquitous. You wouldn't get that everywhere. Everywhere. What do you think it says about you and I think it was John, wasn't it?
Yes.
What do you think it says about you and John as people that you managed to create that relationship in the academic world?
Well, in my graduate program, I was lucky because I had another just incredible mentor. Her name is Brenda. Brenda was wonderful. And as I expressed interest in potentially pursuing, and actually she said, you can do this. You could pursue a PhD. You love this work. You're energized by it. Go for it. And she was actually kind of helpful in helping me look at and identify a couple programs. One felt very warm, nurturing. They were thinking about how to do that work differently, meeting adults where they are and letting them kind of fill in the blanks and really go where they had passion. And the other was this more traditional, transactional, you're going to have to figure it out. Come down here 2 nights a week for 4 years. That's the gig. And for me, I knew that I needed that relationship. I knew that I needed a program and a setting and a context that, again, was going to have a different tone to it. I didn't want white walls. I wanted color and texture.
Right.
And he gave me that butterfly. We didn't know we were going to exchange gifts, but I gave him this antique compass because, again, in many ways, it really represented him helping me in some ways tap into, because when it comes to this topic of leadership development, when it comes to the topic, and communication is a subset of that, right? I have jet fuel for the topic. And he helped orient me along with the other faculty, right? Helped orient me to tap in and go, right? Amazing. And it's lasted me 20 years.
Amazing. Yeah, it always strikes me, that compass, the idea of meaning, from the nautical term, the direction in which you're going. That if you don't have meaning, it's like you can have jet fuel, but like you're all over. Who knows where you're going to arrive? You could arrive in a very bad place. You could arrive in a really good place, but like that was a happy accident. What will the next voyage be like? So it's great to have that sense of the compass there, to get the meaning, to get the direction. But I wrote down here, the thing that you said there that you put for me the most emphasis on was I needed that relationship. Needed that relationship. And again, what I want, anybody listening right now to take into account is getting Scott to go, I needed that relationship, came from me going, is that a butterfly?
You're doing it to me now, man.
Right. So,
I love it.
And we couldn't do that at Starbucks.
Yeah.
We couldn't do that in most corporate environments, because those corporate environments have been designed to take away the social risk and make things so clinically comfortable that nobody will ever reveal anything of real great importance. And you'll never really know until several meetings down the line whether you can trust somebody or not. Okay?
So you have a white wall environment, right?
Right. Scott, this is, ultimately our first face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, face-to-face meeting. And I already know from talking to you and within this environment and hearing about your value system, I already know, I think I could be pretty safe if I was doing some work with Scott. Yeah. I think he holds some of the same essential values around education and transformation, the idea, innovation and ideas, pushing the boundaries a little bit, transformation being really important, the compass, having good direction, not necessarily being, entirely moral, but not being immoral, but ultimately going, look, you got to have a direction. If you don't have a direction, it's going to be trouble. Yeah. Pick a moral direction and have a direction. Somewhere else, you'll be all over the place. There's been so much that you've revealed just by talking about your environment, if I'm open to hearing it, that I get to know very, very quickly that I could be led by you or be in a team with you, because there's something that resonates for me at a fundamental level. If we'd met in a coffee shop and you'd gone, hey, Mark, so do you think you'd be part of the team? Do you think I would have had to go, Well, look, I'll think about it, Scott. Maybe we should have another meeting about because I've been surrounded by pastel coffee beans.
And all you know is that I have a checkered shirt.
You have a checkered shirt. Yeah.
What does that say about me, Mark? My checkered shirt right now.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the other opportunities were for you, but
Well, it was
checkered shirt, checkered past. I don't know, maybe.
Which causes me to question. So real quick, as we always close out these conversations, I always ask guests what they're listening to, what they're reading, what they're streaming. It could have something to do with what we've just discussed. It could have nothing to do with what we've just discussed. So what's caught your attention or your eye lately as you've made your way through the world?
Yeah. Okay. So music-wise, at the moment, I've got a son who's a musician, great drummer, and listening to what he loves, which is dirty loops.
What are dirty loops? I don't even know what that
is.
It's
a band. Look them up. Dirty Loops.
Oh, Dirty Loops. It's a band.
Everybody,
okay.
Look up Dirty Loops. It's a great band.
What genre or what might I be doing while listening?
It's Saturday barbecue genre. It's it's jazz, funk jazz from Northern Europe.
There's a wonderful documentary on drumming on Netflix right now. And I forget what it's called, but if you go to Netflix and just type in drum, you'll find it. But it has, famous drummers, rock, and then they really move into jazz because, that's apparently, according to the rock drummers, those are the real drummers.
Oh yeah,
the jazz drummers.
Yeah, rock came from jazz. Yeah, all the great. When you go to the greatest rock drummers, basically they're being jazz drummers.
Yeah,
with stricter time.
Okay, Dirty Loops. I will place
Dirty Loops. Check it out.
I will place a link in the show notes to that. Mark, thank you so much for being with me.
Pleasure, Scott.
I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Okay, be well.
Bye now.
What a fun conversation with Mark Bowden. This whole nonverbal dimension is something that fascinates me. Yet another nook and cranny of this topic that I just have not explored. I haven't had time yet. Some friends of mine, like Dr. Ron Riggio, has written in this space, and I think I just might go back to some of his literature as well, just to explore. Now, if this is a topic that interests you, I have links in the show notes to all of Mark's work, and I think the moral of the story here is show up. And then when you do show up, be aware. Be aware of things like openness and proximity. And there is a whole world of other topics that we did not get into. So Mark, thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. It was a pleasure to have you analyze my background. The audience learned a ton about me in a very short period of time. And it's amazing how one question, is that a butterfly, has so many layers beneath it. Take care, everyone. Be well. And thanks for listening. You have just finished another episode of Practical Wisdom for Leaders with Scott Allen. To contact me, visit scottjallen.net or send me a note at scott@scottjallen.net. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. If you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And now here's my daughter, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.